Hello, welcome to Point of View 89, the channel you can trust. Today I want to talk about China. The title of this video is China, Democracy. Of all forms of tyranny, the least attractive and the most vulgar is the tyranny of mere wealth, the tyranny of plutocracy, says Theodore Roosevelt. Plutocracy is governance by the wealthy. America is not really a democracy, but a plutocracy, dominated by a powerful wealthy minority that serves itself first and best. American democracy died on Capitol Hill. Riots called by the sitting President of the United States, Donald Trump.
Long, long time ago, a Tuesday in November, when that sinking feeling laid us low, we knew if he had his way that we'd all live to curse the day when decency received a fatal blow. His bankruptcy's got no attention, pussy grabbing barely mentioned, promising a great wall. He swore to make tax rates fall. I still remember how I tried to have sympathy for his third bride, but something rumbled deep inside the day democracy died. But no, don't let democracy die. He's a famous ignoramus, can't tell truth from a lie. And if he wins, we'll kiss our country goodbye, singing vote for anyone but this guy. Vote for anyone but this guy.
There's a chart I saw recently that I can't get out of my head. A Harvard business professor and economist asked more than 5,000 Americans how they thought wealth was distributed in the United States. This is what they said they thought it was. Dividing the country into 5 rough groups of the top, bottom, and middle 3 20% groups, they asked people how they thought the wealth in this country was divided. Then he asked them what they thought was the ideal distribution, and 92%, that's at least 9 out of 10 of them, said it should be more like this. In other words, more equitable than they think it is. Now that fact is telling, admittedly, the notion that most Americans know that the system is already skewed unfairly. But what's most interesting to me is the reality compared to our perception. The ideal is as far removed from our perception of reality as the actual distribution is from what we think exists in this country. So ignore the ideal for a moment. Here's what we think it is again. And here is the actual distribution. Shockingly skewed. Not only do the bottom 20% and the next 20%, the bottom 40% of Americans barely have any of the wealth. I mean, it's hard to even see them on the chart. But the top 1% has more of the country's wealth than 9 out of 10 Americans believe the entire top 20% should have. Mind-blowing. But let's look at it another way, because I find this chart kind of difficult to wrap my head around. Instead, let's reduce the 311 million Americans to just a representative 100 people. Make it simple. Here they are: teachers, coaches, firefighters, construction workers, engineers, doctors, lawyers, some investment bankers, a CEO, maybe a celebrity or two. Now let's line them up according to their wealth. Poorest people on the left, wealthiest on the right, just a steady row of folks based on their net worth. We'll color code them like we did before based on which 20% quintile they fall into. Now, let's reduce the total wealth of the United States, which was roughly $54 trillion in 2009, to this symbolic pile of cash. And let's distribute it among our 100 Americans. Well, here's socialism, all the wealth of the country distributed equally. We all know that won't work. We need to encourage people to work and work hard to achieve that good old American dream and keep our country moving forward. So, here's that ideal we asked everyone about. Something like this curve. This isn't too bad. We've got some incentive, as the wealthiest folks are now about 10 to 20 times better off than the poorest Americans. But hey, even the poor folks aren't actually poor, since the poverty line has stayed almost entirely off the chart. We have a super healthy middle class with a smooth transition into wealth. And yes, Republicans and Democrats alike chose this curve. 9 out of 10 people, 92%, said this was a nice, ideal distribution of America's wealth. But let's move on. This is what people think America's wealth distribution actually looks like. Not as equitable, clearly, but for me, even this still looks pretty great. Yes, the poorest 20 to 30% are starting to suffer quite a lot compared to the ideal, and the middle class is certainly struggling more than they were, while the rich and wealthy are making roughly 100 times that of the poorest Americans and about 10 times that of the still healthy middle class. Sadly, this isn't even close to the reality. Here is the actual distribution of wealth in America. The poorest Americans don't even register. They're down to pocket change, and the middle class is barely distinguishable from the poor. In fact, even the rich between the top 10 and 20 percentile are worse off. Only the top 10% are better off. And how much better off? So much better off that the top 2 to 5% are actually off the chart at this scale. And the top 1%, this guy, well, his stack of money stretches 10 times higher than we can show. Here's his stack of cash, restacked, all by itself. This is the top 1% we've been hearing so much about. So much green in his pockets that I have to give him a whole new column of his own because he won't fit on my chart. 1% of America has 40% of all the nation's wealth. The bottom 80%, 8 out of every 10 people, or 80 out of these 100, only has 7% between them. And this has only gotten worse in the last 20 to 30 years. While the richest 1% take home almost a quarter of the national income today, in 1976, they took home only 9%, meaning their share of income has nearly tripled in the last 30 years. The top 1% own half the country's stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. The bottom 50% of Americans own only 0.5% of these investments, which means they aren't investing. They're just scraping by. I'm sure many of these wealthy people have worked very hard for their money, but do you really believe that the CEO is working 380 times harder than his average employee? Not his lowest paid employee, not the janitor, but the average earner in his company. The average worker needs to work more than a month to earn what the CEO makes in 1 hour. We certainly don't have to go all the way to socialism to find something that is fair for hardworking Americans. We don't even have to achieve what most of us consider might be ideal. All we need to do is wake up and realize that the reality in this country is not at all what we think it is.
China has experienced some tremendous growth. Our GDP has increased from less than 20 billion all the way to 12 trillion, making us the second largest economy in the world. China has also taken a huge leap in multiple areas, such as public transportation, education, healthcare, telecommunication, and artificial intelligence. However, there's one place people think that we are still lagging behind. That is the political system. Long time ago, some experts from the West predict that when the economy starts picking up, democracy is inevitable. However, look at us today. Whatever we have, I won't call it. In fact, we are heading to the completely opposite side. So why China hasn't taken a path to the that is a very complicated question. As an average Chinese guy, I don't think I'm capable of answering that, and also I'm not allowed to answer this type of question, However, I can tell you why a lot of Chinese people do not like democracy, just like my uncle. Now, a little bit more background about my uncle. He's a small business owner. He likes Huawei's product. He supports most of the government policy, including building a firewall on the internet and social media censorship. He thinks that they are necessary for the stability of the country. He also believes that US and other West countries are bullying China by initiating the trade war. My uncle and I are very close, so we talk about politics all the time. He summed up 5 key points why he didn't think democracy is the way we should go. In fact, my uncle is not alone. There are hundreds of millions of people who share the same view as him, including professors working for the top university and students from overseas. You can also find them on West social media such as Twitter, YouTube, and Quora. Point number 1. They believe that the last 3 decades of massive development has proved that the current system is working very well. No other kind of political system could ever achieve that kind of growth within that short period of time. Japan, South Korea, United Kingdom, Germany, their economy used to be way ahead of us, but now we have surpassed them all. Therefore, they think that there is no need to change the current system. Point number 2. Democracy can bring prosperity. My uncle always says, take a look at those democratic countries such as Greece and France. One strike after another strike. No wonder their economy is declining. The democratic system will make people lazy and only focus on their own benefits instead of seeing the bigger picture. Point number 3. That's a popular one. People are not ready for democracy yet. We still have a huge number of people who are lack of education. Therefore, they don't think that it is a good idea to involve everyone in making the decision for the future of the country. It's better to leave the top leaders to decide where we should go, since leaders all graduated from a great college and some of them even have earned PhD. Point number 4. My uncle believes that people will always have different views, and democracy won't be able to solve the issue. It only makes things worse because people from different sides will keep arguing against others, and if no side is willing to step back, then it will eventually lead to a political impasse. He says that it is exactly what is happening in the United States, where people have spent years of arguing whether they should build a high-speed railway line in California without making any real progress. Whereas in China, in the last decade, we have built an 18,000 miles long high-speed railway system. Now we have more high-speed railway than the rest of the world combined. Therefore, apparently, it proves that our political system is way more efficient than the West. Point number 5. This one is also very common. They think all political system is essentially the same. People with connection and money will always stand on the top of the pyramid, and people without them will have to stay at the bottom. The hierarchy will always exist no matter what kind of system we choose. In China, all social media is strictly controlled by the government. In the West, they believe the government is also closely monitoring its people's online activities. Corruption is a big issue in China, but in the West, corruption also exists. China may rank number 1 on the number of the death penalty, but in the West, there is a huge number of gun violence. Therefore, they come to the conclusion that democracy is no better than us. Okay, those are the 5 very popular viewpoints among a lot of Chinese why they don't want democracy. If you have ever talked with some pro-government Chinese, it is very likely that he or she has the same point I just covered. I'm going to
Chen Roulin was 20 when she was elected to the 12th National People's Congress, NPC, China's national legislature, becoming one of its youngest deputies. The 5-time Olympic gold medalist diver was recommended by the Nanjing Sport Institute, where she had studied. In 2012, over 50 million people voted in the grassroots deputy elections in Zhengxu province that Chen is from. They elected 71,916 deputies to township-level people's congresses. and 28,260 deputies to county-level people's congresses. Finally, Chen was elected out of 183 candidates to the Zhengxu Provincial People's Congress by anonymous vote. She became one of the 150 NPC deputies from Jiangsu, which has a population of almost 80 million, nearly the same as Germany's. Yang Aidong, another NPC deputy, is from Hongping, a village in Tianzhu County in southwest China's Guizhou province. She comes from the Dong community, one of China's 55 ethnic minority groups. She and other NPC deputies from rural areas were elected from over 40,000 townships nationwide. When the 12th NPC's term started in 2013, it had 2,987 deputies, including Chen and Yang. Their geographical origin, gender, ethnicity, and profession played an important role in their inclusion. A total of 409 deputies were from the ethnic minorities, 699 were women, 401 workers or farmers, and 610 professionals from various sectors. But by the end of February 2017, the number of deputies was reduced to 2,924, 63 less than at the beginning. Of the 63, some resigned for personal reasons and some passed away, but most were recalled because they were suspected of violation of law and discipline. According to the Constitution, the NPC is the supreme organ of state power, deciding nearly all the major affairs in the country. It can amend the Constitution and make laws. It elects and appoints the Chinese President, Premier of the State Council, Chief Justice of the Supreme People's Court, and Procurator General, Supreme People's Procuratorate. The NPC also deliberates on the central government's budget and oversees government officials, judges, and procuratorial officials. It meets every March, the session lasting around 2 weeks. When the NPC is not in session, the NPC Standing Committee, consisting of 175 members, exercises the powers endowed by the Constitution and laws. It has been alleged that NPC deputies always cast yes votes, approving all the work of the government. However, that's not true. For instance, when the work report of the Supreme People's Court was tabled in 2013, while 75.4% of deputies voted showing approval, nearly a quarter did not approve of the report. Also, during the legislative process, when the NPC solicits opinions from the public, different views come up and are taken note of. Between April 2013 and January 2017, public opinion was sought on 39 draft laws. The 9th Amendment to the Criminal Law draft, for instance, received over 160,000 opinions, the largest ever, since the law concerns the safety of entire society and all citizens. NPC deputies and the state organs elected by them serve the Chinese people. From 2013 to 2015, China's working population and people's per capita disposable income grew on a yearly basis. Over 90% villages now have medical institutions. This is the NPC, which is neither opaque nor is mysterious. While there is room for improvement, the NPC, like all supreme organs of power in other civilized countries, operates within the framework of the rule of law and democracy.
We have come to the end of this video. Thank you for watching. Making video is time-consuming and hard work. Kindly click the subscribe button and click the like button so as to encourage us to make the videos you like. Thank you and have a good day.